Hello again, my name is Richard Cleveland and welcome back to my studio. This is part 5 of painting the Man of Steel. We are going to start getting into doing a few more washes today. We're going to add a little bit more color to him. We will, just continue on from where we left off. It's all about building up color, and we've got our colors out today, and we're going to be using a lot of different color today. So if you haven't gotten these colors, you can always run out and grab them if you like, or look online, see if you can get them. We are going to be using, again, our little bit of flesh base. We're going to do some highlighting a little bit. As you remember from the last episode, we started to add some of those reds in around the eyes, the nose, the lips, the chin, earlobes, that sort of thing. We base coated his hair black, and now we're going to go ahead and start adding some more color. We're going to come back and do a little bit more highlights. Today's all about doing very, very thin washes of many different colors. So we're starting to really build on our foundation. So let's go down to this camera. So as you can see here, we have our Man of Steel, and he's still looking a little on the dark side. So let's see, you guys can see that there now. Let's make sure that we've got the right, there we go. I'll make sure I've got the right one here. So you can see we've got a little bit of color in his lips. We've got a little bit in his nose, around the eyes. But around the eyes, I want to get some more of that natural color. So there's going to be some reds in there. There's going to be some blues, some browns. But we're going to start today by doing a very, very quick wash over the entire thing. And we're going to go a little lighter this time. So I'm just going to set him aside. And there we go. You guys can still see him. Good. So we're going to use our flesh base, and we will shake that up. We'll just put some of our flesh in here. Oh, geez, that came out a lot. That's pretty thin. And this time, I've been using salmon rose quite a bit, but this time we're going to turn to our light flesh. This is Vallejo color 70928 light flesh. This is their model color. You can see it's very, very light. This might be, let's see there. Oh, it's too dark now. Let's see, there we go. How's that? That's better. Okay, that's back to where we were. So we're going to, to me, he looks darker. On camera, he looks a little more ghostly. But in reality, he's not. So I'm going to add some of this light flesh. Quite a bit of it, actually. I've got my palette over here. You guys can see that we've got the light flesh in there now. There we go. A couple little things on our table. We're just going to take our stir stick and just mix that up and get a nice, much nicer, lighter color there. There we go. That's what we're looking for. There we go. Now, we're not going to use this color as thick as it is. We are going to thin that down. You guys have seen me do that before, and we're going to continue to do that today. So we're going to find a brush that we like. We'll just clean that off a little bit. Because we're doing such a broad area and we're doing this really, really thin, I think I'm going to use a much thicker brush. I think I'm going to use this one today. Maybe not. No, I think I'm going to use this one here. The one that, no, not that one either. Can't make up my mind what brush I want. I think I'm going to, no, that's my dry brush one. I think we're going to use this one right here. This is the number 5 round. You can see it's not a very tight mix. So now we're going to take some of that color that we've made up, and we're just going to put it off into its own little palette because we've mixed up quite a bit. Now, I tend to mix up a lot more paint than I need. That's one of my downfalls. And we're going to grab our water and mix. This is our water and acrylic flow enhancer. Now this stuff, basically these are 30 ml bottles, so I'll put 30 mils of distilled water in here, and then I'll put 30 drops, basically 1 drop for every millimeter of water, of acrylic flow enhancer. And it just makes the paint flow better. So we're now going to mix that up. Let's see how that comes out. That's nice. That's what I'm looking for. There we go. Let's see how thin that is when we put it on our brush. That's perfect. So we're just going to do a little bit of an all over. And again, you know, if you've got too much enhancer in there or flow additive, it will come out a little dark. And now we've got our sponge here. We can go over and just dab that off if we think that there's too much. We're just going to go over the whole thing here. And we'll just take that in and we'll just start to break up some of those bubbles. And just kind of blend that. Now we're not removing the color, we're just blending it. So he's going to start to look a little bit lighter, and you can see that now as compared to the other sides of him. His forehead is much lighter than it was before. We get in here. We get down along that face line. We get our sponge, we'll just get in there. We're trying to break up those bubbles that we're seeing that are forming on the skin. Trying to keep those bubbles off. Come down the nose. Now, a lot of those bubbles are appearing because we've got a brush that is allowing a lot of air into our paint. And we're kind of going pretty fast here, so all we're doing is just lightening up that skin a little bit, and giving it a little bit of texture at the same time. And we're going to come back with other washes later today as well. So we'll just continue on here. Get in around the side of the face. And move that around. And you can see I'm just kind of putting it on pretty sloppily. I'm not really paying a whole lot of attention to where I'm putting it. I'm just kind of covering, just doing a general cover of the entire thing. There we go. Get those bubbles out of there so they don't ruin our paint job later on. You can see it's already making a difference. We'll just scrub some down in here, get in around the ears. Get our brush or our makeup sponge. Now you can do this with another brush as well. You can start to open this up with another brush as well. Or a Q-tip. Like I may need a Q-tip right here in the ear, just to break up some of that, those bubbles that are going on. Now I may need a little bit more water in there, and I'm thinking that's probably what my problem is right now, is that I probably need a little bit more water in there. So in this case, instead of adding more of my mix, I'm just going to add some straight water. There we go. We'll get that mixed up. Just use our brush here. Yeah, it's not so bad now. We'll get in around this ear. Get in there. Get our Q-tip in and just break up some of those bubbles. Go back to our makeup sponge. So now to me, he's starting to look a lot more flesh-like, but there's still a lot of work to be done. So we're just going to continue on here. We're going to continue bringing this flesh color down along the neck, and then we will come back and clean that up. Grab our sponge. Get in there, and if you think your sponge has got too much liquid in it, you can go ahead and switch out your sponge and just let this one dry up a little bit. I go through these sponges fairly quickly, so because I find that they will absorb the paint, and again, absorbing the paint's not a horrible thing, but it's also not a perfect thing. Just trying to get those. There we go. There we go. Let's have a look underneath that chin. We got a few more bubbles there that we want to break up. And we'll just continue to go around the back of the neck here. Around behind the ears. We'll just go around the back of the neck. Make sure that we don't get into our paint. And this is just, again, just lightening up that skin a little bit. We're going to come back and maybe do some dry brushing as well. So we've got a lot to cover on today's sort of tutorial. Now, some people, like I know I say this almost every time that we meet, but some people might be happy with this color. I personally am not. I think that it's a little too yellow for me. So now that's going to dry fairly quickly. If we need to, we can hit that with a hair dryer just to get up some of the dampness. But I don't think we're going to need to. There we go. Get some of that down in there. There we go. So we've done our little bit of a wash. You can see now that Superman is, and I've got paints all over my desk here. That's okay. All right. You see that lighten things up just a very, very little bit. And again, it's all about subtle color and subtle shading. And today we're going to spend a lot of time shading. I may want to take a little bit of this color. I know my brush is kind of dried up here. Let's get our dry brush out, and we're just going to hit that and just get a little bit of color on there. And we'll just start to hit those cheeks. We'll hit those high spots. I like to use the back of my hand, my thumb. There we go. We're starting to just get some of those high spots, and we'll just knock them down. This is where we're dry brushing now. And I mentioned this before, that we're going to start to build up this color. And as we do, you're going to see a big difference in the way that this starts to come out in terms of, you know, color. And we're using just that color that we mixed up earlier without thinning it out. So we're not, it's not super thin right now, but my brush is super dry. So I'm not getting it where I don't want it. And I'm just kind of scrubbing random areas, highlighting different areas here. We'll just get some around the ear there, because I don't suppose Superman has a lot of ear wax. So we'll just get in around that ear. I would imagine Superman's pretty neat. I'm going to grab a new piece of kitchen roll here, just for my dry brush. And just test it on the back of your hand. If you've got too much paint, just take a little bit of it off. And again, it's all about building up that color. And we are going to be building more and more of that color as we go along. Now I know it looks kind of weird because he doesn't have any eyebrows yet, but we'll get there. And if you see it being just a little bit, if you think it just looks a little bit too much, then just bring that sponge and just kind of blend it in there a little bit. And that will certainly help to knock down some of the more garish highlights. Now, we're doing these highlights very, very thinly. Like very, very light. We're not spending a lot of time. We're just hitting those high spots. But we're trying to make the Man of Steel look like a real human being. And try not to dig your brush in if you can. Like I kind of just did that around the mouth, but I've blended it, so I'm okay. Get those nostrils. And then we'll come back. This is the fun part. By doing this, we're building up that color I've talked so much about. And you can see as we build up that color, how it changes quite a bit. Let me get the top of his chin. Now we are going to come back and do some areas that we feel that might need a little bit more work. And this is definitely one of them. But for now, we're just gonna hit all these high areas, and then we're gonna get into doing some of that more. We're going to add more color around the eyes and really push the envelope. Really work our paint. We're really going to push the envelope on this, and although we are going for an older Superman, we're not going for an ancient Superman. We're just going for something that's a little bit older. We're going to come back and we're going to add some more color to those ears because they're looking just a little bit too pale. And like I've showed you guys in the past, where I will go ahead and add more and more color over top of this, but I'm adding it very, very thinly. So I don't have a lot of build up in one area. I'm just slowly kind of looking at the face as I go across it, having a look at some of the highlighted areas, like in here. I'm going to add some there. Just where light would normally fall. And then we're going to create some shadowing today. And we're going to talk about those, because we're starting to get some of that red color in that we so desperately want. And we'll freckle him up a little bit. Some people out there are going to go, freckle him up. Superman doesn't need freckles. But Superman does need freckles. Because like us, Superman is somewhat human, or human physiology for the most part. So there we are. We're kind of done with that now, so we can kind of give our brush a little bit of a cleaning. We'll go ahead and clean those up later. So all the ones I'm cleaning up, I just kind of leave off to the side. All right, so let's start working around these eyes a little bit. We're going to use several colors in very, very small amounts. I've got some flat brown, some hull red. I'm just going to put little bits of color down, and we'll start to mix them up. So we'll put a little bit of brown down there. There we go. Because this is not where we want to do like big pieces. We just want little bits here. So we're going to give the eyes a little bit of around the eyes and around the crevices there. We're going to give them a little bit more of a paler look. There's some, I don't know if I like that red. That's the vermilion. I don't think I'm going to use the vermilion. I think I'm going to use the flat red instead. Flat red always has a hard time coming out of this thing. That's because it's always so jammed up. Let's see, what can I use to unjam that? Sometimes you just need a long needle. And I just happen to have one that might work out. Just take one of our tools here. Just kind of get down in there. There we go. That should help. Oh yeah. I really should pick up a new one of these. I've had this red for a long time. There we go. We get a little bit of blue down in there. In this case, we're using the ultramarine blue. Oh, that had a jam. Well, we won't use a lot of that ultramarine blue. All right, so let's find a smaller brush. In this case, we're going to use the number 2. Just going to bring little bits of this paint over and just kind of mix it. Get some red in there. We're going to make kind of a purpley color. We'll get some brown. We'll get some of that dark brown. Maybe a little bit more brown. A little bit more red. There we go. And on this side, we're going to go a little bit more blue. All right. A little bit more red over here. And just a little bit more blue over here. So, give that brush a cleaning. We're gonna get some water here. Now, where's our little water cup? Put that aside for now. There's our little water. And we'll just put some down in one of our cups here. There we go. And then we'll just kind of grab from there. We'll add some clean distilled water to that because we know that we put a little bit too much flow enhancer. So you can see how red that is. That needs to be a lot thinner. Oh yeah, that needs to be way thinner than that. And then same thing on this side, we want to thin it out. Grab a little bit over here. And we can see how thin it's becoming. I want it to be very, very thin here. But that's sort of that blood vessel-y red that we're looking for right there. And we're going to get right in around the eyes here. That's that nice color that we're looking for. Again, just take a little bit of extra off here. And if you think it's too much, again, just come in and pat it off. If you think you've got too much, just come in and pat it off. That's all there is to it. I mean, it's pretty simple. What I'll do sometimes is I'll just drag that on the back of my hand. Just come in with our makeup sponge and just kind of blend that now. That's what we're looking for. That's exactly what we're looking for. And if we need some more water, we can always add it. Again, we can take off the excess off our brush and just try it on the back of our hand, see where we're at. I'm going to put a little bit of this around the nose. Just get right in there around the nose, as you can see. It's just going to give that nose some color. And again, bring in that makeup sponge and just hit it. If you think the color's too much, just bring in that makeup sponge and hit it. Now I really like the way that that is starting to show up. We're going to do the same thing on the lips here. Really like that kind of purpley color. We're going to hit that with a little bit of red later on too. So I'm more concerned about getting this darker color down in the crease of the mouth. There we go. And then we'll come back and play with that a little bit later, and we'll just go ahead and go around this side of the nose. Just getting, around the nostrils. Use our sponge just to kind of play that color a little bit more. Get some of this darker color. Maybe we gotta get a little bit more water in there. We may have to pull some more over. There we go. And we'll start to do around this eye. There we go. And as we slowly make our way around the eye, I know he's looking kind of tired, and you might think that his eyes are looking a little bit too red. But after we dab that off, again, we're just adding shadows here. We're not going to we're not adding a lot of color. We're just adding some shadows here. And again, I'm just going to come back and dab that off. Get a little bit up here in the forehead. Again, we'll come back and dab that off. Now we've got that red color, which is a little bit more red. We can make it a little bit more pink if we want. We don't want to make it too pink. And then we'll just come back and we'll line those lips. There we go. Again, it's all about building up subtle color. Now, this particular model has very thin lips. So we only want to try and go to the natural line of the lips. That's going to give you a little bit of an airbrushed look, and it's not going to make his lips look like he's got lipstick on. Because we're kind of fading that color as well. We're really kind of fading that color as well. We're just taking our time. There we go. Really liking the way that came out. We're going to take a little bit of our purple color again, and we're going to work it into around the nose here a little bit. Again, we're not using a lot of paint. We're just being very subtle. I'm going to go in and just do some areas there. Just where we would naturally see the shadows. And we know that he's got a lot of lines up in here into his forehead. There we go. Really thin that out. As we thin this out, all we're trying to do here is just give him some shadow lines and maybe a little bit of redness in the nose as well. Just normally where we would see that little more pinkish color, we'll put a little bit here on his cheeks. Hopefully you guys can see that. Not too far out of frame for you. And it's very thin, this color, and I'm dragging it across my paper towel as well. And then I'm coming back with that makeup sponge, and I'm just adding in that little bit of color. See, I'm not putting a lot down. I'm just kind of dabbing it. And remember we talked about this, about just coming in and very subtly putting in your color. Because if you start to put in too much color, then you've got to go back and clean it up. And that's never any fun. Maybe some down along that cheek line. There we go. Really starting to like that. I'll do a little bit in his forehead as well. First, we're going to do this cheek. And if we blend the color on something this large, it looks way better at the end of the day. It does start to look way better at the end of the day. Now remember, we've been sealing our work as well. That was a little too red. Maybe we can get a little bit of that pink water in there and just kind of clean that up a little bit. Yeah, there we go. And we'll take our... If you run into problems where you think you've got too much, like here, I think I've got a little bit too much. All I'm going to do is I'm just going to clean my brush. I'm going to grab some clean water. And I'm just going to dab it on there. Now remember, we sealed this before. And all this is going to do now is it's going to allow me to get in there and grab some of that excess paint and just blend it now. Instead of me having, you know, really harsh sort of lines. And same thing on this side. I think I'm going to do the same thing over here because it is looking a little bit blotchy. So I'm just going to grab that clean water and I'm just going to drop a couple of bits on there. And then grab my makeup sponge again and just kind of work it. Just so that, you know, I'm taking out some of that blotchiness, which I don't want. Now I'm really starting to dig that. He's looking a little bit more grizzled, and that's what I wanted. I wanted that grizzled looking Superman. Put a little bit here on his chin. Let's use my finger here. Now we've got some area right here underneath the lip, and I'm just going to kind of erase by using a little bit of that flesh tone that we mixed up earlier, that lighter flesh tone, and then just very subtly coming in with that makeup sponge and hitting it. So let's start working around the ears now. We may have to mix up some more paint here. There we go. Start working our way around the ears. You know, there's a little bit more blood vessels in the bottom of the ear. Get our sponge in there. That's looking a little better. Because my paint is so thin, it's much easier to start building that up. There we go. We'll just get around this ear here a little bit, do some little dabbing. And we'll bring in that makeup sponge, just start to dab it off. Now that's pretty dark, so just going to get that sponge in there while it's still really wet and just kind of blend it in. And maybe we'll do a little bit in here. Again, that's really, really dark, so we'll try and get most of that off. Now what I'm doing here is, because I've got some pink on there, I'm just kind of going around and putting it into areas that I think need a little bit of that darkness. Like up here in the forehead. And I'll take that sponge and I'll just get in there and blend. There we go. Blend that down. Now it's really weird because his eyebrows aren't painted, so it's looking a little bit strange. I'm going to grab just a little bit of water on my sponge here, and I'm just going to kind of pull that color that we put in earlier. Now, because we sealed this between our coats, it really is a good idea that you can come back and you can just, if you just add a little bit of water to your sponge, you can kind of soften up a lot of areas. And we're just going to pull very lightly on the areas that we did, and that's just going to pull some of that highlight color and make it look less blotchy. But it's also going to blend, so we're just very lightly pulling. We're not, and dabbing and pulling, and I'm pretty happy with that result. His neck is pretty good, so not too much there to really worry about. We are still going to make some more progress here. Let's get some of that black out, and we'll start to just do the eyebrows. We've got some black here somewhere. We'll just use our Tamiya black from up here. Take right out of the lid. Let's mix that up a little bit. You can hear those balls shaking around. There we go. We'll just take a little bit off the lid here. And because I've still got that thin brush, I'm just going to take some of that excess off. I'm going to be very careful here. Now these are sculpted eyebrows, and I'm not a big fan of sculpted eyebrows because they're a little tougher to make look real. Like right now he's kind of looking like he's got a little bit bushy eyebrow here. And so I'm just kind of building up that color. I'm not trying to fill it all in. Because if you fill it all in, it just looks like a big black mess. Like he's got caterpillars on his eyes, and I don't really want that. But I want to get down to the line, so All a matter of how you hold it. If you do these little wisps, it'll give it a much more real texture. And I put some paint on my brush, and I'm trying to follow the sculpture as best I can. And that way, it will look much more realistic in the end. It won't look like he's got big caterpillars on his eyes. So this is just the black that we're using, just straight black. Again, we're just following those lines, and if you have to come back from there. We're using the sculpt to get to kind of set our boundaries here on his eyebrows. So while that doesn't look horrible, there are some areas that we could fill in. And a lot of times what I will do is I will thin this right down so they don't look like caterpillars. And that's not looking horrible. We'll come back, but it is setting off the look of that face a little bit better. And that's what we're after. We're just trying to now kind of define some of the areas of the face before we go ahead and start adding in the rest of our color. I don't know how well you guys can see that, what I'm doing here, but I'm just trying to use the point of my brush and just following the lines of the sculpt to define my boundaries on these eyebrows. That's why I don't really dig sculpted eyebrows very much, because they really can make or break a model. And in this case, they're kind of breaking it. But they're also helping to define what we're doing. So again, we're just going short little hair-like strokes just to keep this is the bane of my existence. Just to keep the shape of those eyebrows. We're just following what we did earlier. So those don't look horrible. They do need some work though. but there he is, bushy eyebrows. So I'm going to take this opportunity also to go back and start to play around the hair here a little bit and just fill in some of those areas that we missed when we base coated the hair the last time. We're just going to work our way down to the hairline. Just go slow. If you get a little bit of black where you don't want it, just load up the end of a Q-tip, get it into a point, and just come back and pull that out of there. And you can do that a couple of times. Just load it up with water and then pull it into a point, just like that. And just go in there and just erase your mistake. There you go. That's all there is to it. So we'll just finish up here around the hair. And we'll go all the way around. This is going to help us in the end too when we want to give this a little bit more of a realistic look. Because hair, again, this is overly sculpted hair, very much like you would see in a comic book. We're just going to start to fill that in and define it a little bit more around the face, as we have with everything else that we've done. Now, when we start to meet next time, we're at that stage now where I'm getting very happy with this. As far as the look goes. So I'm going to want to start adding a little bit more color into the skin. We'll start with the blood vessel-y look. And we'll get that defined. I'm trying not to put my fingers where they don't need to be. And we've got this curl that's define that a little bit more. Wisps of his hair kicking down. And we're pulling back, finding a starting point and just pulling back and filling it in. That's all we're doing here. We've still got a lot of work to go on the hair, but right now I'm just kind of framing out the face. And making our way down. Again, just like the eyebrows, we're just kind of pulling those hairs that are grasping the skin, and we're just defining them. So we're getting a more defined edge here around the face. And I'm pretty much digging that. There's still a little bit work to go, but I am digging the way that he is starting to come out. And we are now done with the black for today. So let's recap. What we did was we added some color to around the eyes. We lightened up the face a little bit more, lightened up the neck. We added some shadowing. next time that we meet, we're going to do a little bit of spatter technique. I am going to go ahead and give this a clear matte spray once it's all dry, and then we will come back on the next episode, which will be episode 6, and we'll start using the FW inks, and we're going to start laying down some color into the skin and giving it a little bit more of a speckled look, and a little bit more blood vessel-y areas, and we'll finally define our lips a little bit, and then we should be getting pretty close to being done the head, and then we can get working on the rest of it. We are going to add some gray to the temples on this one, just to give it a little bit of an older look. We'll do the eyes. Those are going to take some time to get the eyes right. We've got to add some color in around the eyes yet. In around the whites of the eye, we're going to add a little bit of gray to them and maybe drop some shadows in there as well. But for now, that's where we're going to leave it for today, and we will see you guys in the next one. So the Man of Steel is starting to make a huge difference. He's starting to come to life now with the addition of the hair and the eyebrows. We, again, like I said, we added that color in there. We're going to add some speckling. We're going to give him a very light color when we're done. Again, we're just going to do a really, really simple wash over the entire thing after we do all of our speckling. And we are going to, when we do the speckling, it's going to take some time. So we are going to, I'm going to show you the technique that I use, and we're going to be spraying in between, and we're going to be drying in between as well. So until I see you guys on the next one, have yourselves a great day. Do something nice for one another, and be good to your neighbors. And until next time, remember that the first layer is always your foundation to a great print.